Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Canby. This is episode 46, and today's guest is Britain's Strongest Man 2020. He's had 7 appearances at Worlds, 3 finals, multiple podiums at big shows. Welcome to the show, Mr. Adam Bishop.
Hey, Nick, how you doing, man?
I'm doing terrific. Of course, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm excited to watch you in 12 days, but how are we feeling for Britain's Strongest Man?
Yeah, really good. Kind of had a bit of a rebirth since the injury earlier in 2022, and everything's feeling great. You know, it's a very different show to World's Strongest Man, for example, a lot quicker. Some kind of lighter events there. And I'm feeling great. You know, I don't have to be so heavy, which is nice. But yeah, I've been happy. You know, the rehab on the tricep was a lot more complicated than I first thought it was going to be. Obviously, I've done my bicep before, and that was pretty straightforward, but everything seems to be lining up nicely. I'm kind of just moving into my final taper now, going into the show.
So I saw it looks like you guys did 2 weeks out, did a little big workout at the Giants Live compound, training on some of the implements. I was watching your power stairs, very fast, very explosive. And I also have a power stairs coming up. Do you have any techniques or tips when it comes to power stairs, or just best way to train it?
Yeah, for sure. Like, if you're a good deadlifter, you know, ultimately power stairs is, you know, in this case, you've got 5 blocks and 3 steps. So it's 15 deadlifts with a relatively light weight, and you're jumping in between. You know, that's all it really is. People like to overcomplicate it, but I think that the biggest thing is to make sure that, you know, you're explosive when you can be. Obviously, we're fastest when we're unloaded. So being really slow, stepping up onto the steps is going to just slow you down massively. So, you know, jumping up in between steps, jumping down quickly are all going to be massively beneficial. And then just making sure you're pulling those blocks nice and high, especially if, you know, you're one of the smaller or shorter strongmen. You got to be really powerful on that initial pull and pull it nice and high.
I saw your backwards hops when it came to now. Is that something that you practice coming down the power stairs to go into the next implement?
Yeah. I mean, I try and train it as much as I can. I haven't got a full power stairs set up in my gym. I've got some jerk blocks that I'm using just to practice that transition between them. But yeah, I try and do that. And obviously, you know what it is though, right? You always feel more athletic than when you see it in video. Like when I'm doing them, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm back to like my 105, like all my rugby days. I'm jumping, I'm feeling great. You look at it like, oh, it's just a big bloke looking awkward jumping down. But it makes a massive difference, kind of being fast and pushing off the implement and you know, and not having to turn around, step down the implement and kind of do it all over again.
No. But yeah, of course, those are all great suggestions. But yeah, I think I might try to copy your backwards hops. That looked really efficient. I was trying to like sprint down in some of the other contests I've done. I've only had it in a couple shows. It looks like power stairs has been making kind of a comeback as of late in terms of coming back into the regular fold of strongman events. But of course, looking forward to doing it soon. But yeah, regarding kind of BSM, so of course, a lot of kind of great athletes coming through. Any of them that you have your eyes on, or of course you expect to give you a run for your money at this year's show?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you know, you've got 2020 Europe's Strongest Man, Luke Richardson, making his comeback. He's a phenomenal athlete. You know, 2019 Britain's Strongest Man, Graham Hicks, who's phenomenally strong. But ultimately, I think everyone in that lineup is dangerous. We're in a bit of a golden period of strongman in the UK, especially, where the standard across the board is so high. So even the guys who maybe putting their first appearance in at Britain's Strongest Man are still very, very good on certain events. So, you know, it's going to be about being consistent across the board and making sure you don't kind of drop any points on any one event, really. So everyone's dangerous, but, you know, I try not to look at other guys. I try and focus on my own performance, but it's difficult in this day and age with everything on social media. But, you know, the usual faces were there and thereabouts, but I don't think you can count out the other guys competing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, following up from the golden era, so you think there has been of course a huge increase in the British scene probably since 5 or 6 years ago, maybe like in 2015, 2016 when you were kind of still coming up?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I started out, it was, you had your top 4 guys. You had, you know, Eddie, you had Loz, Terry, and Mark Felix, and then basically the rest of us were fighting for that last, for that 5th British spot at Worlds. You know, and that kept changing quite regularly. You know, who was getting that 5th spot, and now, you know, it's more of a case that anyone can be beaten on any day. And you've got obviously with Eddie doing so well at Worlds, I feel like it really kicked the sport on, both from a deadlift point of view and overall got more people involved over to a wider audience. But one thing I have noticed is that the quality of strongman in Scotland's gone up massively, obviously with the Stoltman brothers doing well. We've got more Scots coming through, which is brilliant because for a long time there just wasn't anyone, in competing in Britain's, who was of that standard. But with Tom and Luke doing so well, it's kind of really picked up from the Scottish side, and the English side is getting stronger and stronger as well.
So besides the Stolmans, you have in Scotland, you have also Black and then also Jack, right? Who's coming into the fold.
Yeah, that's it. And we've also got Zaki Malusi as well coming through. And there's some other athletes as well, kind of knocking away. Trying to get through via the different competitions. So, and Andy's obviously been out to Worlds. We've got Lewis Jack as well, who I've never competed against. So it'll be exciting to see him compete at Britain's. But yeah, the guys are coming through pretty well, and it seems like everyone in Scotland as well is like a good stone lifter. It's like they've really taken it as their national sport, stone lifting. Kind of getting back to their roots. So Andy's a great stone lifter. I believe like Lewis is a good stone lifter as well, and obviously the Stoltmans kind of speak for themselves, their performances in the stones. So yeah, it's interesting how like you end up getting that kind of one event where everyone's in one country seems to be really good at it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think in 12 days is going to be a great contest. So of course, for your listeners that are in the area, make sure you buy your tickets before they sell out. So I did want to kind of chat about. I think I was talking off air that, of course, I'm a 105 kilo making the move into the heavyweight, but I know you spent some time in the 105 kilos. Now you did a few contests before moving up. Was that right?
Yeah. So I competed for 2 years in the 105s. Won the UK's 105 and then moved up to Opens. It's interesting actually, like myself and Hicksy, Graham Hicks, both competed at 105s together. He won Britain's and I won the UK's. There were 2 separate contests that year. And we both went into the open ranks at kind of like with different techniques, if you like, different strategies really. I know Hicksy put a lot of weight on fast. He was just better at putting food away than me. And obviously statically he was unbelievably strong, even when he was under the limit of the 105s. He was doing things that no one had done before at that kind of lightweight. It's probably stuff that now the lightweight guys and the middleweight whatever are kind of doing easily, but back then he was throwing up like 170 kilo logs when no one else was. So we definitely had 2 different techniques though. He put some weight on quite quickly. I took a much slower route for mine in terms of how much weight I was putting on, and kind of just did some domestic shows first for a good couple of years before kind of getting my big break, getting second at UK's in 2014, and then getting picked up for the Giants Live Tour. So yeah, it was a little bit slower for me than Hicksy's success, but I wouldn't have changed the way I did it. I think it was the right way for me.
I remember Hicksy's log press because when I first started in 2012, that was, I think the world record was his 170 kilo, and then that eventually got broken. But for you, so of course being 231, and you're somewhere around 150 kilos now, correct?
Yeah, I'm sitting at 150 now kilo. Yeah.
So you've gained about 40 or 45 kilos. So how's that journey been, and do you have any tips for gaining weight?
Yeah, I had this exact question from someone online asking about, they were going to the Opens from the 105s, any tips? And I just said to them, just make sure that the weight gain it helps you, doesn't hinder you. I think that's massively important because I see a lot of guys bang a load of body weight on, and then suddenly the events that they're really good at, for a lot of the 105 guys coming up, they're going to be class at the moving events, and that's where they're going to beat the heavy guys. And they get so heavy that they get worse at that and only add some kilos to their static events. So I said to him, just make sure your weight progression goes nice and slowly, and it actually helps you. So it helps those static events, but it doesn't take away from what you're probably already good at, which is the moving events. I say to this day, like an event like the Conan's Wheel, I think that the under 105 guys would beat the open guys in that event for a couple of reasons. And I think I was actually better at the Conan's Wheel when I was lighter than I am now heavier. It just sits out further. Obviously, cardiovascularly, the lighter guys are a lot fitter and faster. And I think for an event like that, it's important to stay lighter.
Interesting. I actually did Conan's Wheel this weekend down in Rhode Island, and Evan Singleton was out for a seminar in Rhode Island, so I got to spend some time with him and train with him. So we actually did Conan's Wheel. We worked up to 950 pounds. Um, Not sure on the kilo conversion right off the top of my
That's all
head.
right. I can work in pounds, mate. No worries.
But yeah, I always say it's always good. It's always like a taller man's event. But yeah, Evan looked very strong on that. But that's I probably hit the most on the Conan's Wheel. But I know that's an event at World, so we were going through the what you needed to do, and he heard that he's like, I have no access to a Conan's Wheel, and there's a Conan's Wheel, of course, 2 towns by. Let's go and try it. So we pretty much packed our bags from one gym and went over there. But yeah, Conan's Wheel is a fascinating event. I'm glad it's back at Worlds. Now going a little back to, of course, your weight gain. Now, when you did it, of course, pretty incrementally, did you do like maybe like 10 kilos a year? I was talking to Trey Mitchell. I had him on last summer, and he said he pretty much gained 10 pounds every year. So he went from 280 to 380 within his kind of his strongman career. But do you have any certain foods that you gravitate towards, or recommendations when it comes to nutrition?
Yeah, so I was actually the same. 5 kilos, or like just over 10 pounds a year is what I put on. I thought that was quite sustainable for me, all the way through, and I've kind of settled around this 150. But no, foods wise, it's a balanced diet. It's just more and more food. I don't think you need to go crazy with it. Obviously, you don't need to be so restrictive that you might need to in the lighter weight classes. Because you don't have the weigh-ins, you don't need to worry about having cheat meal here and there. But you need to make sure that the food you're eating is good quality food. So, you're getting your proteins from a variety of sources, whether that's red meat, eggs, dairy, whey protein, fish. Try and get it from everywhere, really, and that's what I try to do. And then my carbohydrates, I'm a big eater of carbs. I like to fuel my workouts. So I'm going for those, like oats, a lot of rice, pasta. The other thing as well is you don't have to worry too much. You can have those pasta options, which I find a lot easier to eat than say just having rice and chicken and rice the whole time. And that's really all it was. I did the whole, when I was really trying to put on the weight, I was going through like a lot of milk and stuff, and that just kind of screwed up my stomach. So I kind of stayed away from that now, and it's kind of common sense, really. I don't think you need to be chucking in a load of weight gainers and stuff like that. If you are, if you do really struggle to eat, then look to maybe blend one or two meals. But ultimately, it's always going to be better stuff that you're going to eat and chew, and that's obviously the chewing part is the first part of your digestion. Getting that amylase in your saliva to break down those carbs, break down the food itself to make it easy to digest. So I'd say try and eat as many of your actual proper meals as possible, and try and stay away from the shakes.
That was one suggestion from a nutritionist. This is years ago, but she almost said try to chew your shakes, just because it does get the saliva into it. That helps you break down. So that's an interesting tidbit. And it was funny to talk, of course, talking about dairy. When I had Kevin Ferris on the podcast, he said he had a Chunky Monkey every night, or like a Ben and Jerry's pint for ice cream every night. That's how he gained weight. But he of course kind of struggled with it because he's, of course, naturally more leaner.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin with his job as well. Like, Kevin's a freak. Like, he's so like vascular and like lean the whole time. He could probably eat whatever he wants and still stay super lean. So yeah, you got to be, obviously every diet should be individual, and you need to find the foods that work for you. But most of the time, it's common sense,
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on. So last year, if I remember correctly, I think it was sometime around Worlds or right before Worlds, but you had some big aspirations to go after the 505 kilo deadlift record.
Yeah.
Assuming you stay healthy this year, are you planning to potentially go after it again?
Yeah, the plans are being put in place. I'm going to be looking to go for it if everything else in the season goes well. That's my key first part. Obviously, I've got Britain's now, we've got Europe's and Worlds, and they come thick and fast. I think we've got all three of those shows in the next 4 months, or within about 3 months of each other, actually. So it's going to be get those done first and foremost. Ultimately, I'm a strongman athlete. I'm not just a deadlifter. But once we've got those out of the way, and I'll see where my deadlift is. At the moment, it's feeling great. I'm pulling everything raw at the moment as well, so no suits. I can look to reintroducing the suit and then see how things were feeling. But yeah, the prep was for that deadlift champs was feeling really good until obviously the injury struck. But it was feeling like bang on and everything. I'm a big numbers guy, as people know, so I like to know exactly where I'm at, and things were looking very good. So just that's it though. You get injured, you pick up knocks, you pick up injuries. That's the sport. That's quite normal. So yeah, things happen like
Um, Now, you mentioned a little bit about Europe's and Worlds being together. Or being close together. They're about 2 weeks apart this year, right?
that. Yeah. Europe's are very very close to Worlds, but Darren's organising Europe's, and Darren Sadler, obviously, the guy in charge of Giants Live, and the events are going to be extremely similar to the ones we're going to be getting at World's Strongest Man. So I've got no problem competing in it, because effectively I'm going to be doing those events anyway, whether I'm training or competing. Yes, you might be holding a little bit back potentially, but ultimately 2 weeks before, you're probably going to be doing your last heavy event session anyway, before you get into your taper, before traveling and stuff. So I think it's actually quite a big advantage, to get out there and compete, especially for some of the guys maybe actually haven't competed up until that point. Some of the European guys might not have done any more shows until that point. It'd be quite a good one to get in and compete, because as you know yourself, like there's nothing like competition to bring the best out of you and push you onto that extra gear. And sometimes you've got to get used to it. Sometimes it's actually difference between doing lifts and training and competition. It's very very different. So getting all those bright lights, I think, would be quite beneficial, especially in the prep for Worlds.
Yeah, hopefully shake the rust off, and then leading
That's it. Yeah.
into Worlds. Now, do you do all your own programming? Like, for instance, have you already built up a plan, or you got a manager probably sit down one day and build out a plan for Europes and Worlds?
Yeah, I mean, I'm too much of a control freak, and actually, the part of this sport I enjoy the most is the programming. Coming from my background as a strength coach, and I do that for 10, 12 years. This is the part I enjoy the most, so I'd be very reluctant to actually hand over coaching to anyone. I've got guys that I chat to in the sport and bounce ideas off of, but ultimately, I enjoy the program the most, and I'll usually sit down and do all my programming for the whole year beforehand. It's just done. I know when all my competitions are, once we roughly know when they're coming out. And that's what I've done now. My training plan for Europes and Worlds is done as soon as I found out what the dates were. And then I've also now made the plans for September for the deadlift as well. They're kind of going in, just so I can get the training planned out for that. But yeah, all the training's done. I know exactly what I've got session per session. I just find it a lot less stress, knowing exactly what I need to do and where I need to be at every kind of point along the program on the way.
I'm very much in the same boat. I'm a little bit of a control freak too. So
Yeah,
the gym is an outlet, especially for stress, and also in the end of the day, it is an enjoyment. So having the control of programming, doing the lifts that you want in different areas, I think it is super important.
yeah. I think one kind of point on that, we get a lot of guys obviously coming through the ranks, and with the internet, everyone's much more. You've got access to everyone coaching. I coach some people as well, a small number. And you can be coached by anyone in the world now because of the internet. But I do think there is some benefit in taking the time and doing your own programming, making mistakes by yourself, instead of just kind of jumping with a coach straight away. I feel like if you're getting with a coach, sometimes you don't learn things for yourself. So definitely, great coaches out there, sign up to them, but maybe ask questions and try and learn from each coach you work with, and also have periods where you decide, I'm just going to do my own programming, and kind of learn stuff for yourself, because you'll learn what kind of works for your body and what doesn't. And ultimately, I think you'll be a better athlete.
I love that. So moving on, so talking a little bit about, we just kind of touched upon about your tricep. Now, do you think some of the triceps injury was more related towards like overhead pressing, or was it more related towards your deadlifting in terms of like the strain or something else?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got it on video, and I haven't put the video out. I've shown a couple of people. I'll probably put the video out at some point, but it happened deadlifting. I was in a triple ply suit that I was getting used to. It's actually Terry Holland's suit, so I'm going to blame him actually. He lent it to me. I was getting used to it, and they're a completely different animal from a single ply. If no one's, if people, a lot of the lightweight guys are getting used to their suit lifting as well. So it's a completely different animal from a single ply. And everything was feeling great. I was smoking weights, like did a 920, I think, pull, put the bar back down, and then it bounced and rolled forward on me. And being in the suit, your body's wanting to fire straight back up. and my strap got caught on one side of my arm. I got the other arm out. And as the bar rolled forward, the suit sprung me back up and shot my legs out behind me. And I landed face first on the floor, cracked my eye socket onto the ground, and then I broke my fall with my other arm, kind of in like a hammer fist position, trying to break my fall that way. And you can see in the video where my tricep tendon just pops off, because obviously it's got, you know, just over half my body weight going through that tendon in effectively like a skull.
So it was the bracing action. It wasn't actually the pull from the deadlift.
No, it wasn't the pull from the deadlift at all. It was actually that fall, and that kind of bracing. You can see the tendon go, and there might have been some kind of wear and tear in there from some dumbbell pressing I was doing a couple of days before, but ultimately it was just such a huge force going through the floor, and the crack on the video is pretty impressive. My face hitting it, but I was actually very lucky. You know, I nearly landed on the deadlift jack, which was out in front of me, and that would have been game over for me. So yeah, I hit the deck. I didn't actually feel the pop like I did with my bicep, but my elbow instantly swelled up. So I knew that, you know, I've been around a few injuries myself, and I knew that was a bad sign. So yeah, got a little scan on it. That was being conclusive. So I spoke to my surgeon who'd done my bicep and got the MRI, and yeah, detached. I was at a full detachment of the long and the lateral head, and the medial head was kind of partially torn as well. So he decided that we needed an operation. So we had it operated on. Basically, he pulls the tendon back down, drills through the bone, and then attaches it there, and then puts sutures in as well. So you have like a double bond on the tricep. You know, and that surgery, I think, was about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. He's incredibly talented, Professor Watts. I said he reattached my bicep. He's reattached several of the strongman guys' biceps in this country, and obviously triceps now as well. But it was a much more complicated rehab process than the bicep, for sure. The bicep was easy in comparison, and the tricep is still ongoing, obviously. But you know, it's starting to get somewhere, but it was a little bit complex for a while.
So so it seems about like 12 weeks recovery for you before you started moving the big weights. Is that about right for this tricep?
It was probably post-surgery is actually close to 16. Right. More like 16 weeks. I was back competing off the 12 with the bicep, but yeah, it was a little bit slower. I had some issues with it as well. I had a couple of my sutures in the scar site decided they don't want to be in my arm anymore, so they started moving to the surface and coming out and like pulling out little stitches and stuff out of your elbow is never nice. So that kind of delayed me a little bit. And then we had some issues like, you know, we can get these issues with rehab all the time, but where my medial tendon has partially torn, but obviously the long and the lateral head were fully ruptured. When we reattached it, those heads of the tricep weren't wanting to actually fire. So the medial head was doing a lot of the work and was becoming quite inflamed and sore. And that was then holding me back on my lockout. So my tricep pressing power felt great. It was then just that last little kind of 5 degrees of extension, elbow extension, that I was having the issues with. A lot of kind of rehab and working through that, and we managed to kind of sort that out. But yeah, it was those little bits that we just didn't have with the bicep.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But of course, glad it's feeling very healthy. So I was mentioning a little bit like kind of off air. So like personally, I had like kind of a string of SI joint related back injuries last year that kept me out of a lot of shows. But last year I found a lot of like comfort watching either like Martins or Brian Shaw videos talking about their challenges in terms of overcoming injuries. In Brian Shaw's case, he went through one of his podcasts. He talked about how he won World's Strongest Man in 2011. He had the neck injury in 2012 that caused him to lose a lot of feeling in his hand, which caused like atrophy or lose a lot of muscle within his hand and also his arm. So in 2012, he didn't do as well. But then he was able to kind of overcome it in 2013 by winning World's Strongest Man again. I always say with the kind of injuries, I always say, of course, there's always the physical toll, but it can sometimes wear on you a little more mentally than anything. But do you have any kind of suggestions in terms of how to overcome some of those mental battles with any injury when it comes to strongman?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're going to get injuries. This sport is kind of, you know, it's extreme. So you're going to get injuries. And I think the biggest thing is don't focus on what you can't do. You know, focus on what you can do. So for me, you know, I was squatting. I decided I was going to kind of work on my legs a lot in the sling. But not just that, you know, I was doing all my training that I could and training around it and focus on that rather than focus on the fact, oh, you know, I've just ruined my season, you know, loss of earnings. I can't do this, I can't do that. I think it's very easy to fall into that pit of self-pity and not actually have some positivity and get on with things. But just from a mental side of thing as well, is find something that you enjoy doing that's got nothing to do with strongman. You know, I think it's very easy, and a lot of us end up, you know, we like strongman. We watch everything on YouTube. There's loads of our athletes, you know, like, you know, Brian, Eddie and stuff, putting stuff up on YouTube. But sometimes you just need to step away from it, because I found that I was just getting kind of driven down with the sport by, you know, because I wasn't actually able to do it. It was quite depressing for me. And that's when I kind of fell back into a sport I used to do a lot. I used to do a lot of fishing when I was younger. And I've got back into angling at the moment, and especially while my injury was bad, and it kind of, I was just so therapeutic, kind of going out and not actually thinking about the fact that I was injured, and, you know, I was just kind of enjoying being outside and enjoying that kind of fresh air, and not just sitting around focusing on the things that I couldn't do. You know, it was really beneficial. I think I'd employ everyone to, you know, even if you think strongman's your life, you know, you're not going to be able to do it all the time. So make sure you've got something that you in your life that you can do and enjoy, that just takes the pressure off sometimes.
Yeah, I saw some of the fish you caught recently. Yeah, you posted a couple, of course, a couple big ones, and not native to I would say the New England area, but of course that was a little new to me, but of course always pretty cool to see. Now have you gone out, done some, of course, even like kind of trophy fish in the past, either kind of go like on big cruises or go out on expedition in terms of kind of deep sea fishing?
No, I haven't. I've done some kind of deep sea fishing, but more like the bait fish, kind of easy, like mackerel and stuff in the UK. But it's on my bucket list. That, like, we've got a lot of sharks. They're actually coming down to the south coast of England at the moment. You know, like thrasher sharks and stuff like that. So it's on my to do list to go out on a boat and do some kind of like big game fishing. I'd love to do that. Although I don't know how I'd kind of survive like an hour and a half fight with a fish. You know, I know some of the battles that when you're dealing with these massive fish can be a bit more problematic. But yeah, definitely, you know, I've done all kinds of fishing in the UK, whether that's kind of like for game, like trout and salmon and stuff, and then obviously the, you know, specimen and hunting that I'm doing with the carp fishing at the moment. But yeah, I'd love to go out, and hey, who knows? Like, you know, we're going out to Myrtle Beach. Maybe
right.
maybe someone out there who owns a boat can take me out, and we can have a day's fishing or something. But yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, you ever gone tuna fishing?
No, but we do have tuna in the UK, and they are, when people hook them, it's insane, like absolutely insane. Like they just shoot off, and the boat's going to chase them and stuff. So yeah, definitely something I'd love to do. Yeah, the UK is not great for that all year round, but in the summer months when it's a bit warmer, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, very similar to New England, but yeah, I think there'll probably be a few boats out there that, again, if they're listening to this, maybe they'll give you a ride out.
Yeah.
So of course, kind of moving on in terms of kind of questions. So like for instance, for myself, whenever I'm trying to like model something around like either like split jerks, I used to look at like Olympic lifters like Dmitry Klokov and Ilian Iliad. Circus dumbbell, I look to Mateus or like Novikov. But for like deadlifting or other events, are there certain role models that you look to when it comes to kind of pick, kind of like, if for instance you see a perfect form and you want to replicate that, but is any role models you had either right now or even coming up in the sport that you used to like emulate your forms and techniques around?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I look towards, you know, Andy Bolton a lot. You know, first man to pull 1,000. I looked at a lot of his training, learned a lot from him, and different stances as well. I looked at some of the lighter weight powerlifters as well, kind of growing up, and definitely for those techniques. For the overhead stuff, yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate. I went to Loughborough University, which is a big kind of sports university in the UK. So I was surrounded by fantastic lifters in that gym. It was insane, like GB weightlifters and stuff. So, you know, I used to enjoy, especially like the behind the neck jerks, watching kind of like Tommy Yule, who was a Commonwealth medalist, weightlifter, doing all his work and seeing how he lifted and try and copy him when I was kind of starting out. But as I've moved on, you know, the fundamentals you can get from those guys, but you have to really kind of shape your own pulls, really, especially with a deadlift, I think, and shape your own technique. because it's so dependent on stance. You see a lot of people just kind of looking to like Eddie and Brian and just kind of trying to copy their techniques. And sorry to burst your bubble, but you're not Eddie or Brian. These guys where Eddie was 194 kilos, 420 pounds or whatever. And Brian was at the most close to like 500 pounds at one point. So they're big men. They've got a separate pull, and I don't think for most people, your deadlift stance should suit your body type, and that's what I've kind of done. I think I'm pretty well known for having a very narrow stance, and that kind of just suits my body type with my longer arms, etc. So you get the fundamentals from those guys. Back in the day, like I said, Andy Bolton, I copied a lot of the things that he did, especially in terms of getting his lats tight and locking into that start position. But ultimately, you've kind of got to find your own way.
That makes a lot of sense. You were talking a little bit about the behind the neck jerk. Of course, that was a big event last year at Worlds. I know. Of course, I was actually poised for you to probably potentially hit a big number, potentially over 230 based off of your training.
Yeah.
I know you were probably in the toughest group out of all the groupings, especially since how heavily the stone is weighted towards the outcome of who makes it to the finals. Of course, it's not easy going against big Trey Mitchell. But you think you had 230 in you? Even that being
100% easy. Yeah, I hit that 220 in training, and the actual setup out at Worlds I think was actually more beneficial. It was a very flexible bar. So if you were explosive, I think that's why Alexi did so well on it as well. Incredibly explosive. So you could use the whip of that bar and catch it really well. So yeah, I'm gutted. I know there was both me and Pavlo Korbiaka, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, another incredibly talented weightlifter. We both kind of went out on the stone off, and I'm gutted because it would have been great to, you don't see that behind the neck jerk at Worlds that often. It's not like a mainstay like log. So for that, to be the year that I kind of fall at the stone off not to get in was pretty gutting. But hey, enjoyed watching all the guys. Gave a couple of tips to Martins, helped him out as well with his technique before it. So yeah, at least we saw him do well in that event. So that was good.
What were the tips?
It was just about his bar path and making sure his hips were staying underneath the bar. With a behind the neck jerk, you don't have to sink directly under it. You can, because it's not like in a front rack position, you don't have to stay completely upright. So sometimes you can pop your hips back on the dip and drive them through and get a little extra bit of pop that way. And that's what was just one of the little things we were talking about that I think he used quite well, to be honest.
I do because they recently posted that within the last week or so. So I did watch all the lifts, and yeah, Martins looked like it was always a little in front of him, and then he would stand up and come right up there. So yeah, that was thanks to you.
No, Martin's nailed it, man. He's a talented weightlifter. He's like a sponge as well. He can absorb information very, very well. So yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Now, in terms of like all the contests, of course you've done several dozen. Now, do you have a favorite contest to date so far in your career?
For the outcome, obviously Britain's Strongest Man 2020 was pretty special. But also, from an enjoyment point of view, I love doing the Shore Classic in 2020. The first year we did it, it was such an incredible atmosphere. For me, it just took it like Strongman back to its roots. Ultimately it's about a group of guys seeing who can lift the most, and that's what it felt like, because there was no crowd. We were just there, the athletes, training in Brian's home gyms, plural, which he's very lucky to have, and they're like both insanely good. But everything, and Brian Kerry took fantastic care of us, which is awesome. And even though we didn't have the spectacle that we have with Giants Live and the shows and the atmosphere, which is second to none, with that show, as I said, it was back to basics. And especially when JF pulled that world record on the Hummer tire, it was just the strongmen there, and we were all going absolutely crazy. I think that was pretty incredible.
That's cool, and it was great that you guys were able to get together in that, of course, that pandemic year. But also very nice for you guys to let Brian win his own shows. That's of course, hats off.
Well, you got to admit, no one's given Trey the note. No one's given Trey the memo on that for the last 2 years. He's been unbelievable. So
no, Brian could have been a 3-time Brian Shaw champ. So
yeah.
Now, when it comes to, of course, I had this question come up in the last few podcasts, but I thought it'd be a good question for you. So in general, maybe working towards like a max deadlift or a heavy single in training. Do you have a preferred scheme in terms of reps and sets leading you to a deadlift?
Well, yeah, firstly, I'd probably just leave that for competition. So I'd never do a max in training, obviously. But
So
yeah, if you mean for
how
like,
about like a heavy set? Like if you're working up like a heavy single, you have a heavy single or maybe a heavy set that day. Do you have like a preferred route in terms of how best to warm up to?
yeah. So obviously, I'll before I even touch the bar, I've done all my core work, I've done all my prep work that I need to. Should be sweating before I even touch the barbell, and then I treat every single barbell, every single weight as a chance for speed work. So I'm not one to separate speed work and heavy work. So even if I've got like 70 kilos or 370 kilos, I'm trying to pull it as fast as possible. That way I've got a lot of work working up, but I'll take as big a jumps as possible. So for me, most of the time it's a 55-pound plate on each side going on every time until I get up to my desired weight, and then smaller jumps then. But most of the time I try and take as few weight jumps as possible and save my energy. And most of the time I'm only going to be doing singles or doubles on that. I'm not doing a lot of reps because I'm already warm. So like I said, I'm treating that work as speed work. I think that's the best way to do it. And that way, every single rep should look exactly the same. Whether you've got like a lightweight or a heavyweight, they should look exactly the same.
All right, interesting. Always interesting in terms of how people kind of peak themselves. I have a pretty good idea in terms of pressing, especially if I'm working up to like a heavy set or heavy single. But always kind of interesting, of course, what other athletes have approach it. And as what I've noticed watching your YouTubes and just in general throughout your career, you're always very polished, very professional throughout all your shows. So I was interested in terms of like, what's your typical nightly routine before a big show, and like, for instance, like how do you prioritize like meals, or what's your typical night of meal before a big show?
Yeah, I mean, most of our shows now are we don't start until like 5 p.m. With the arena shows, so it's actually kind of like a bit of a long day before. And I actually prefer that we just got up and competed. Get out of the way, you get all the nerves out of the way. But
Like 10 a.m.
yeah, just get it done. Like I just like that, and then I can eat because I sometimes get proper nervous and don't want to eat. But I try and keep everything exactly the same as my normal day. So I never have any different food, any different meals that I wouldn't usually have. So I have my training day diet and my non-training day diet, and I'll just have that normal food, because I think it's very easy to screw your digestion up by throwing in foods that you're not used to. So try and keep the meals exactly the same for a competition day. Just treat it like I'm training at 5 p.m. So have all the meals leading up to that, and then during the contest, then I'm just kind of drinking my like intra-workout stuff, so carbohydrates, some kind of aminos in there and stuff, and electrolytes, and that gets me through the competition. But yeah, I just try and keep everything as close to normal as possible. I'm not a big splurger. I'm not going in and doing that like massive carb up the night before or anything like that. Try and get that extra bit of like bloat. That's just not me. I think it'll probably end up me on the toilet for about kind of 5 hours instead, which is not going to be beneficial.
Now the typical meal, would that be like steak and potatoes, steak and rice? Was that look
Yeah,
like?
like beef mince and pasta is a good one for me. I have that quite a lot. I find that really easy to digest. Sometimes there'll be some kind of chicken and rice, but at the moment I'm on a big pasta hit. I'm kind of finding it really easy to get the carbs in that way. Like when you're trying to hit like 150 grams of carbohydrates in a single sitting from like Whole Foods, then yeah, I'll tend to go with the pasta, 200 grams of pasta, and 250 grams of beef mince kind of into like a bolognese is actually quite nice and easy to digest. So yeah, it's the big one for me. Like morning meals are kind of your standard like eggs and oats. Then as I said, I'll probably have a couple of those like beef and pasta meals during the day, and then cream of rice as well with some whey. Find that digests incredibly quick. So if you are someone who's wants to get food in you fast before you train, or fast after you train, then yeah, definitely kind of just drinking cream of rice and whey is a good way to go.
All great suggestions. Very, very similar to, of course, kind of what I've implemented. But of course, always good to hear from another source. So Adam, when things are all said and done, what are you looking to achieve in the sport of strongman?
I'm here the same as everyone else. I'm trying to win World's Strongest Man. I fully believe that on the given day, anyone can win that title with the right events. I think we've seen that multiple times with different shows. Depending on the events, depending who's in the final, anyone can win anything, and that's my goal. Now, my goals this year is obviously winning Britain's Strongest Man and trying to get into that top 5 of Worlds. Obviously, my best performance at Worlds has been 6th, but I think I'm bringing a much better package to this season, and I'm confident in that. And then back end of the year, we're looking for that kind of 505 deadlift, get that ticked off. In all honesty, a lot of people have talked about it. It hasn't really come to come into reality. So yeah, I'd like to change that.
Excellent. Of course, I'll be excited for you to do it. So those are most of my questions, but you kind of touched upon it a little bit. So after British Strongest Man, so you have Europe's, you have Worlds, potentially the deadlift record in September. But anything else on the horizon in terms of for the 2023?
Yeah, hopefully we'll do the Shore Classic in August. Hopefully get an invite to that. So Brian, if you're watching. But yeah, that'll be key. A great show. So hopefully I can get back out there. Obviously missed it last year through injury. And then yeah, the deadlift champs are in September, and then I actually get married like 2 weeks later after the deadlift champs. So I think we're probably gonna do my stag do like directly after the deadlift champs. So as long as I pull 505, then I'll have a good chunk of cash to go into Cardiff and get drunk with the boys.
That's a good plan. I'm actually I'm in the same boat. I'm actually getting married this year as well. So I've been planning around my stag and my wedding.
Yeah.
I'm taking some time after the Arnold. Are you planning to come on the Arnold to spectate into?
No, I'll be staying back. I mean, it's tough for the guys in the Arnold. Like let's be honest. The Arnold Strongman. I think when is it? Is it 11th? Is it 11th of March? Something around that time.
It's this year is March 2nd to the 5th.
2nd to the 5th. So at least this is the start of the month. But imagine those guys will finish the Arnold, and then they're going to have like what 5 training weeks before we're flying out to Worlds. So that's a tough one. So yeah, it's those guys have got a tough couple of weeks to get ready for Worlds. So I'm very happy with the fact we've got kind of that Britain's and then a couple of weeks and the Europe's, which can be very similar events to the Worlds. But yeah, no, it's on the bucket list as well to get out to the Arnold at some point, but it just hasn't happened for me yet.
Well, I think potentially, I think this might be the last year in Columbus, so next year it might be in LA, just closer to Arnold. I think that's the
really
speculation. Wow. Yeah, so
that's a big change, eh? That sounds crazy.
So yeah, we'll see. I imagine if he brings it to LA, probably might be bigger and better than ever.
Yeah.
So that would be, of course, very exciting. But yeah, hopefully I'll try and make it over the pond to actually meet you in person. Of course, that would be terrific. But that's all my questions for today. Of course, thank you for coming on. Thank you for answering all the questions. And you were, of course, a great guest. And of course, best of luck at British Strongest Man. And I know you'll do terrific. And for everybody that's listening, you guys want to learn more about Adam, there's more. There's going to be his Instagram in the description, also his YouTube, and also a link to his training program. So if you're interested in kind of seeing his style of training, there'll be a link to his training programs. And of course, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and of course, tell your friends about the podcast. But one way I like to kind of end the show sometimes is a piece of wisdom. So how would you like to end the show with one piece of wisdom for all the listeners out there?
This goes out to the guys, really. But as you get older, I think good words of wisdom to live by is never trust a fart and never waste a boner. I was told that once. I can't remember who it was, but I think it's really wise, especially as you get a little older.
That's great advice.